our Radicchio salad with dried fig, caramelized balsamic, pepitas, olive oil, and fresh basil. We have our beautiful New Zealand Ora King salmon with caramelized fennel, honey, and chili. We have our LK signature green salad, our couscous, our chickens in the oven, and our apple crumble. I wanted to create a menu that wasn't going to replace your Bobba's chicken soup and your mum's simmus and your favorite honey cake recipe, because everyone's going to make that the way that they have traditionally had it growing up, and that's going to taste the best to you. Like, my mum's chicken soup tastes the best, my Bobba's simmus is the best. I don't want another new recipe that's kind of taking a spin. I want the classics with that. But what this is going to be the bulk of your kind of Rosh Hashanah menu. It's not overly sweet. I wanted to kind of come up with a kind of balanced, healthy, and somewhat savory menu. And then you can achieve this in 2 hours, and then you can worry about doing all your Lebanese chicken soup, simmus, if you make herring, all your honey cakes. So yeah, this is something you can achieve in 2 hours. It's really healthy and fresh, and you can obviously swap in and out ingredients and be quite freestyle. So let's start with entree. So we're going to be making a caramelized fennel, honey, and chili salmon. Tonight I'm only doing 2 very small portions of salmon because it's just me, but I would recommend doing this with a side of salmon. I'm using New Zealand salmon. It's called Ora King salmon. And why I really like it is because it's really difficult to overcook. It's got a very high fat content. There's no growth hormones, no antibiotics, no additives. So I like to know that what I'm eating is kind of free of all that kind of stuff as much as I can. So that's what I'm going to be using. If you were going to be doing this with a whole side of salmon as opposed to 2 small fillets, I would be putting the fennel in the bottom of my baking dish raw. But as you can see, I've gone ahead and just roasted it with a bit of olive oil and sea salt. I went ahead and roasted it because my fillets are so small, it's going to cook a lot quicker than a whole side of salmon would. So again, if you're doing a whole side of salmon, put the fennel in raw. And if you're doing a small portion, and cook it for like 20 minutes. If you're doing the whole fillet of salmon, put it in raw and you'll cook it all the same amount of time. And if you're doing small fillets, just cook this kind of fennel mixture ahead for 20 minutes on 180. So I'm going to put my 2 salmon fillets on the cooked fennel. And I just have some fresh red chili that I thinly sliced. If you're not into chili, you can definitely leave this out altogether, but it will be quite mild when it's baked like this. And you can even take out the seeds and the pith if you want to have a bit of chili flavor without the heat. And it's actually not the seeds in chili that's spicy, it's the white pith within the chili. So now we've got the chili, the fennel, the salmon. I'm going to drizzle the salmon with some honey. And this is just going to caramelize a little bit and add a sweet note. And a drizzle of extra virgin olive oil. I'm using a mild tasting extra virgin olive oil. And all that means is it's pure olive oil. Sometimes if you buy light olive oil, they can substitute like 10% to 20% of vegetable oil. So I know that if I'm getting cold pressed olive oil, it's kind of the best quality that you can get, and it's very readily available. I just got it from Coles. I'm now going to sprinkle over some sea salt just onto my salmon fillets because I already seasoned the fennel. And I'm going to also do a sprinkle of white pepper for this. You could use black too, but sometimes white pepper adds a kind of nice warm heat. as opposed to black pepper. So this is just going to go in the oven now for about 10 minutes maximum, I'd say. The fish will continue cooking once you take it out. So I'm going to pop this in the oven. And the salmon's just going to cook on 180 for 10 minutes. So in 10 minutes time, if someone wants to remind me, that would be amazing. So the next thing we're going to go on to is our entree salad. So I'm doing teeny tiny portions tonight because it's just me. But this is called Radicchio. It's a really beautiful purple leaf. It does have a little bit of a bitter taste to it. But I very distinctly remember watching an episode of Nigella when I was a little girl. And she said you should always make a green salad or a red salad. You shouldn't mix both. And for me, I totally resonated with that idea. So we're going to be making my LK Laney's Kitchen signature green salad for main and the Radicchio for entree. So not only is it beautiful, but it tastes really interesting too. So onto the Radicchio, I have some dried Turkish fig that I just sliced into very thin slices. I hope you can see that. And we're going to place that onto the Radicchio. And you can make this as big or as small as you want. I've gone ahead and torn the Radicchio and cut the figs just for sake of time, so you guys don't have to watch me doing that. But this really isn't going to take you more than 10 minutes, no matter what size you make it. So now I've put the figs on. I'm going to sprinkle over some pumpkin seeds. Again, you could use sesame seeds, sunflower seeds, like feel free to use whatever you like. But what I'm trying to achieve is a sense of balance. So we've got the bitterness from the Radicchio, we've got the kind of caramelized sweetness from the dried Turkish figs, we've got the nuttiness and the crunch of the pepitas. And now I'm just tearing over some fresh basil for some herbal kind of fresh notes. Again, you could use dill, you could use flat leaf parsley. It's really very much up to you and what your family likes. And this salad could be made the day ahead, actually, because it's all quite dry, and then I would just put the dressing on at the last minute. So that's our salad. And then I'm going to dress it. This is reduced balsamic vinegar. I bought this, or my mum bought this for us in Israel, but you could get it from any kosher supermarket. It might not come in this bottle, but you should be able to find reduced balsamic vinegar. All they do is kind of reduce it in a pan, and it becomes kind of syrupy and caramelly without added sugar. And it's just one less step. You don't have to clean, you don't have to do any of that. And then I'm just going to drizzle over my balsamic and some olive oil. And I'm going to just season it with some salt. And that's our salad done. I hope you can see that. So that's our Radicchio, dried Turkish fig, basil, pepitas, olive oil, balsamic salt. Simple, easy, quick, delicious. Now we're going to go on to main. So for main, we're going to be making really yum spice roasted chicken thighs. I'm using kind of a Persian-inspired spice mix, just of flavors that I really like. And feel free to adjust the quantities to your liking. So all I have is one sliced onion at the bottom of my roasting pan and some whole chicken thighs, skin on, bone in. I also really like to do this with Spanish onion, and then it has a really pretty color when it roasts. So for the spice mix, I'm going to start with the largest quantity of sweet paprika, not smoked. And I'm just using this Pear brand. And I'm going to be using some beautiful pink sumac. I hope you can see that. So I'm going equal quantities of sweet paprika and sumac. And sumac is a dried sour berry, and it's got a kind of lemony note to it. And then I'm going to add in probably equal quantity of onion powder too. Now we're going to lessen the quantities. So we've done probably equal parts sumac, sweet paprika, and onion powder. Now we're going to add like a dash of garlic powder and the same of turmeric. And we're going to add some cumin and some coriander seed powder and some dried dill. Try to buy your spices in small quantities if you can, because spices have a tendency to lose their flavor very quickly. So smaller quantities is a better way to go, and then you just have, you know, a better chance of getting through it in a quicker time frame. I just added some white pepper, and now I'm adding some salt. I'm using pink salt, but you could use sea salt or anything you like. This is freshly squeezed lemon juice. Once a week, I like to get some lemons, squeeze them, juice them, put them in a squeeze bottle. Sorry. The pepper went to my nose. Yeah, once a week, I like to juice some fresh lemons, and then I've got all the mess there. I clean it up, and then I have a beautiful bottle of fresh lemon juice to cook with all week. You make lemon water in the morning. So it's just a really handy kind of hack to help you cook a little bit more fresh. If you don't want to go to that step, or you don't want to use fresh lemon juice, that's perfectly fine. Just, I wouldn't substitute it with bottled lemon juice, because it's got a kind of artificial taste to it. And so I'd say I probably did 3 tablespoons of fresh lemon juice. And now I'm doing this same quantity of extra virgin olive oil. And this will just all kind of adjust depending. If you're doing 10 chicken thighs, you're going to need double the amount of spice, double the amount of olive oil. So just be a little bit fluid with it. Don't be afraid. I'm sure you're all amazing cooks. Use your intuition. Make it your own. I've actually had the pleasure of having Mushka's cooking, and it's beautiful too. Mushka's got a very international kind of cooking style from all of her roamings and international adventures. So I'm just adding a little bit more olive oil because I want it a little bit more fluid. So you can see this is what my spice mixture looks like. I want it runny enough that I can pour it, but not too thin that the spices will kind of run off the chicken. There's nothing wrong with that happening, but what you'll see when we roast it, the chicken skin is going to go really crispy and kind of crunchy and delicious. And we want that spice to stick on kind of as much as we can for all that flavor to come with the chicken when we serve it. So I'm just going to take the spice mixture and spoon it over my chicken. You could definitely let this chicken marinate in this mixture overnight. Have it all ready in your roasting tray and just roast it kind of right before your guests come if you want it quite crunchy. You could also cook it and reheat it. So it's really quite versatile and it's super quick. Now I'm just going to do a final drizzle of olive oil just to make sure that the onions kind of have some oil on it and they don't burn. And now I'm going to...
That's 10 minutes.
10 minutes? Oh, perfect timing. I'm just going to go grab the salmon. Yum. Smells beautiful. Can you guys see that? Oops, slipped a bit. So that's our salmon done. I'm going to garnish it with some fresh dill in a minute, but we'll just finish up with the chicken. So I'm going to cover our chicken with foil. And you want to make sure that you kind of seal it really, really well, because when you seal it well, all the steam will stay in the chicken and help it get really tender. So we're going to roast the chicken in the oven now for 1 hour on 180. Oops. And then we're going to uncover it and roast it for another half an hour. So cooking it for the first hour is just going to make sure that the chicken's on its way to being cooked through and tender. And then in the next half an hour, when we uncover it, it will go really crispy, which is what we want. So I'm just going to pop this in the oven and we'll check on it in an hour. Perfect. We're in good shape, everyone. All right. Now we're going to get on to our couscous side dish. Okay, so this is just Israeli couscous. I'll bring a box and show you guys. I'm using the Osem brand. It's not the pearl couscous, it's just regular. You can obviously do Israeli couscous for this, like the pearl kind, but you have to boil it, get out a pan, run it under cold water to make sure it kind of doesn't stick together. So we're going to be doing this in a kind of hack kind of way and using kettle water to cook it. So this is half a packet, which is 340 grams. So we're halving this, okay? I'm just going to put my kettle on, so I've got very hot water. And we're going to be mixing the couscous with some spice roasted chickpeas. So these are just chickpeas, 1 can, that I drained and I dried really, really well. And then I rubbed it with a paper towel because sometimes, this one, sometimes the kind of skin comes off the chickpeas. It's not crucial that all of the skins come off, but you'll notice that when you dry them, some of them will come off and you just want to pick them away if you can. So again, this is where season it with what you like. So I'm going to do a tiny bit of turmeric, more for that golden color than anything else. A bit of garlic powder. And some cumin. And I'm going to drizzle it with some olive oil. And season it with some salt and pepper. And when you roast these, they go really kind of crunchy and quite savory, which is a nice textural contrast to the couscous. And now we're just going to toss it. And we're going to put these in the oven for about half an hour until they go really crispy. And I'm roasting mine on 180. Everything's on 180. So this is our couscous. It's half a packet of the Osem couscous. I've used San Remo before, but I find it just doesn't cook well for me. It's always a little bit gluggy. I'd love to hear if you guys have tried using it and have had success with it. But anyway, I like supporting Israeli brands, so nothing wrong with awesome. And now I'm going to get a measuring cup. And we're going to measure 3/4 of a cup of water, hot water. And you will want to make sure that you kind of put your measuring cup on a relatively level surface, just to make sure that you're measuring it correctly and it's all level. So that's 3/4 of a cup of water that I'm going to pour onto the couscous. But before that, we're going to just season our couscous with a little bit of salt, pepper, and olive oil. Salt, pepper, really mildly, like just to make sure that we're building layers. If you kind of salt food just at the end, you're going to just have a very flat kind of seasoned taste. I'm not saying you have to add tons of salt. I don't like adding tons of salt, to be honest, but you'll just have salt on the outside as opposed to throughout the food. So I'm just going to mix this up. And you want to make sure it's mixed pretty well because you don't want like a big lump of salt. And now I'm going to pour in my hot water and give it a mix. And you'll see quite immediately the couscous starts to suck up that water. You will look at it and think, oh my gosh, that's not nearly enough water. I need to fix this, add tons more water. Don't make the mistake. Hold on, sorry, 1 second. I'm going to get cling wrap. And we're just going to cover this and let it steam for a couple of minutes. The nice thing when you serve couscous with a dish is when it's done right, it should be a little bit dry because you want it to absorb the sauce of whatever you're cooking. So if I'm serving it with a chicken, I would hope that the couscous is a bit dry and then sucks up that sauce. So we're just going to let this sit for about 5 minutes or so, 5-10 minutes, and we'll come back to it. I went ahead and chopped some flat leaf parsley. So we're going to be stirring that through it as well, and some currants. So it's going to be a really nice kind of flavorful, but also mild side dish to go with our spice roasted chicken thighs. You could also add a bit of date syrup if you wanted to the chicken thighs, if you want it to be a little bit sweeter. But I know that I'm going to be serving my menu with some other sweeter dishes, so I wanted it to be a bit more balanced. So now, while we're waiting for the chickpeas, we are going to go on to our green salad. But just to recap, we've done our radicchio salad and roasted our salmon. We have got our chicken in the oven. We've got our couscous going and our chickpeas in the oven. And now we're going to go on to our green salad. Does anyone have any questions so far? No questions? Any other questions? If anyone has questions, feel free to type them and then someone can read them out to me. So now we're going to be making what's called my LK signature green salad. This is a product of those episodes of Nigella telling me to make only a green salad. But this is something that my clients request quite often from me. It's, pretty simple ingredients. It's fresh, it's crunchy. Shana Tova, Eva. Thank you for joining us. So I'm putting this in a disposable foil because I'm going to be giving it to a friend. I find it's quite nice in these times to kind of give people something fresh. I think a lot of times for the fun of it, we bake and we'll drop off baked goods. But I think sometimes it's nice to give something quite practical and fresh, because people will always kind of have chocolates and cookies in their cupboards. So this is like a nice idea. If you're making one, maybe make one for a friend, and a friend can make something for you, and you all can have different dishes. But yeah, so this is just baby gem lettuce. I bought this from Coles. It comes in a pack of 3. And we're just gonna very close to the edge, just cut off that end. And why I'm cutting it close to the end is because I want the root relatively intact. This is going to help our lettuce kind of stay intact when I cut it into wedges for the final presentation. Okay. So again, you can cut this however you like, but this is just how I like to serve it. So I hope you guys can see. We are basically going to cut the lettuce in half like that, and then we're going to cut it in half again. So we have beautiful kind of wedges of crunchy baby gem lettuce. You could obviously use Cost lettuce for this. You could use iceberg. If you really wanted to, you could use rocket or baby spinach. But I quite like the texture that kind of a Cost or an iceberg lettuce has. So I'm going to cut this up. This also keeps quite well if you make it a day in advance. We're going to be putting some peas in the salad, so you'll want to make sure that you dry them quite well if you're going to be serving them the next day. And there's also avocado in the salad, so I like to just put it in whole like this, and it reminds me that we're going to be cutting it up tomorrow, because I'm sure, like many of you know, avocado does have a tendency to go brown and oxidize quite quickly. So that's our lettuce wedges done. Now we're going to go on to our baby cucumbers. These are called baby cukes. You can buy them very widely, like they're widely available pretty much everywhere now. I like Lebanese cucumbers as well, but I find that these are really crunchy and they don't make your salad soggy because there's a lot less seeds, or the seeds are less developed in the baby cucumbers. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut off the ends of the cucumber. Again, a very small amount because they're really tender and they don't have kind of a stem attached to them like regular cucumbers may. And now I'm going to cut each cucumber in half lengthways. So we have 2 halves. And then each half I'm going to cut on a diagonal. So your cucumber will look like that. I just find this to be a really nice shape, and I like it to be quite a big chunk because I want it to be all consistent. So I'm just going to finish up these cucumbers. And it's quite interesting, like these knives, this is called a Kiwi brand knife. I'm using something with a relatively thick blade. I also like using Victorinox knives, those little red ones. But when I'm cutting something a bit more substantial and bigger, I like to use a bigger knife. And these are really light. They're very inexpensive, but good sharp knives can help you cook very quickly. And it's funny because I never grew up thinking knives are so important. And I still don't think you need to spend a lot to get good knives. But working with sharp knives, I have kind of noticed from doing a lot of my Lebanese kitchen jobs and cooking at home that it just helps you cook a lot quicker. So that's our cucumber. And I like to arrange this salad into little piles. A benefit of that is that it does keep better, but I just like the way it looks, and as opposed to mounding up a salad, this way you can kind of pick more or less of what you like. These are just snow peas, and I've topped and tailed them, and now we're going to shred them. So, hope you can see. Let's go like this. To shred them, I'm just going to take one, hold my hand in a little bit of a claw like this, just so I don't cut myself, and cut it on a little bit of an angle. And you'll see when you cut it on an angle, it just creates a really beautiful shape, because when you're doing kind of cooking with such simple ingredients, sure, it will taste nice, you know, cutting it any old way. But when you take that extra few minutes to go and cut it really thinly, I find it kind of transforms the eating experience. Everyone's got, you know, different amounts of time available to them, or some people can be bothered, some people can't. It's still going to be delicious, and if you make it with love, it will be beautiful. But if you do have those extra few minutes, it is really quite nice to just take your time, cut things really nice and, you know, consistently, and you'll end up also with a beautiful looking salad. We're going to also be making a really fresh lemon dressing for this salad. I like to avoid refined sugars and mayonnaise and that kind of thing in my salad dressing, because like when I think of a salad, I hope it's healthy. There's going to be like a little bit of honey, but nothing crazy. We're just trying to create a very balanced tasting menu. And when I cook, I try to kind of come up with a menu where I think everything will kind of go together. So if I'm doing an Asian salmon, I'll probably do a similar kind of themed salad. I won't do, you know, margarita pizza and Asian salmon. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I just kind of like to keep it a bit kind of consistent or themed, if you want to kind of put it that way. So this is our shaved snow peas. It's a really beautiful, delicate texture and really crunchy. So now I'm going to put the snow peas in a pile. Now I'm going to take my frozen peas. I just took these out the freezer right before we came on to Zoom. And I'm going to pour some hot kettle water onto them, like we did the couscous. And I find cooking frozen peas this way to be the perfect amount of time to cook them. And it's also the least mess, which I really like. Cut corners where you can, but smartly. This is some fresh dill that I just took off the stem. I do quite like taking my herbs off the stem. You can kind of use dill or parsley stems in a soup. If you're making an Asian soup, you could use coriander stems. I just find it kind of gives a more delicate finish, but you don't have to do that. It's completely up to you. My avocado, I'm kind of going to I did wash it because it is going to touch the cut vegetables. I'm going to put that in the corner there. And now I'm going to make our dressing. So I'm going to be mixing lemon juice, olive oil, and I'd say equal parts lemon and olive oil. And a good pinch of salt. I do find that this salad dressing really does like salt, and it makes a big difference. And I'm also going to add some white pepper. Again, black pepper, unless it's very finely milled, it's going to kind of be too dominant in this dressing, whereas white pepper kind of just dissolves into it a little bit more. I just have some good quality Dijon mustard, and for this quantity, which is probably 3 tablespoons of olive oil, 3 tablespoons of lemon, I'm probably going to do about a teaspoon of Dijon. And you will notice that I'm not kind of measuring anything very strictly. I really do like to be a bit freestyle with cooking. Obviously, if you're new to cooking, you can feel scared to kind of go freestyle and not measure, but taste things as you go. In the beginning, it might not be perfect, but you'll learn to kind of create flavors that taste good to you. And you'll be able to come up with recipes of your own instead of having to follow like a strict recipe kind of to the letter. I'm just gonna smell it for seasoning. Smells good. And I just added a dash of honey to kind of cut the acidity of the lemon, but feel free to leave it out, to add more, whatever you like. Now I'm gonna put this salad dressing in a little container because if I dress it now, it will go soggy, and I'm gonna be giving this to someone. So I'm just gonna grab a little container. And this is just a little whisk that I bought from an Asian supermarket. You could also use a big whisk, could use a fork, but a fork, it won't kind of incorporate everything as consistently as a whisk would. And I'm gonna put my dressing in there, and we'll make room for the peas when they're finished. Okay, so that's our green salad almost ready to go. I'm gonna clear my workspace up a little bit. I'll put the Radicchio salad right there so you can see that. Let's move this up. Do we have any questions so far? What are you guys making for Rosh Hashanah? I'd love to know. So let's get back to our couscous. You'll see that all the water has absorbed into the couscous and smells very mild. Smell a little bit of the olive oil and the pepper. And now what we're going to do, if you were just to serve this right now, all of your couscous is going to be one clump. So we're going to grab a fork, and I'm not going to kind of press down with my fork, but I'm going to let the weight of my fork kind of go against the couscous, and we're going to fork it. And that's just going to help us separate all the grains and make for a really fluffy finished couscous. This amount, which is half a box, will probably be enough for 4 without leftovers. But I always do like to err on the side of generosity and make a little bit more, and then you can have for leftovers. So I'm just forking through the couscous. And again, these recipes, they're just quick, no hassle, minimal mess recipes that will let you make your chicken soup, your simmus, your honey cakes, the star of the show. And they're just really fresh and healthy. So we're almost there. Just making sure I break up any large kind of lumps. Okay. So that's my couscous now. You can see it's really fluffy. It's kind of dry, and it will mean that it will absorb all of the beautiful sauces from the chicken when it's done. So now I'm going to stir through some finely chopped flat leaf parsley. You could also use coriander. You could use dill again. You really can use any fresh herb that you like, but just try to keep it flavors that will work with what we're adding. So in addition to the parsley, we're going to be adding some currants and the spice roasted chickpeas. And you'll notice that when you add the parsley to the hot couscous, it makes it really fragrant and just adds enough heat to that parsley to bring out its beautiful green color and slightly tint that couscous. And now I'm going to add in some currants. When it comes to reheating this, you can heat this up in the oven. You could microwave it, but putting it in the oven is probably the best way to heat it because we're going to be adding those spice roasted chickpeas, and putting it in the oven will give us the best chance of having those chickpeas stay a bit more crispy. And I probably added like a handful of currants. I want them to be there and add a kind of sweet chewiness, but I don't want them to take over. So that's our couscous almost ready to go. We're just going to wait for those spice roasted chickpeas, but we can put that aside for the meanwhile. I'm just going to clean up my workstation a bit. 1 minute. For me, I find cleaning as I go very helpful to not have a kind of huge mess of ingredients at the end, and then you can kind of sit and enjoy your meal without a big mess in the kitchen. But everyone's process is different. Find what works for you. Okay, I'm just going to put these few things aside. Now we're going to move on to, actually, let's finish the green salad. I'm going to quickly drain these peas. And like I mentioned earlier, because I am going to be giving this to a friend for their dinner or their lunch tomorrow, I'm just going to kind of dry the peas a little bit with some paper towel. You don't have to be meshuggah, don't go crazy. Just kind of wipe away a little bit of that excess water so that you don't have a big pool of liquid at the bottom. So I'm happy with that. I'm going to pour our peas into that little nook here. Okay. So that is our green salad done. Beautiful, fresh, colourful, and very quick to put together. And now we'll go on to dessert.
Lainey?
Yeah?
Can I ask if you, obviously you've got that presented to give to someone for them to put together themselves. So if you were doing that for right now, would you be mixing it all together, or would you put it up, set it up like that?
I like to serve it like this. I cut the avocado into wedges. So I cut it in half, take out the seed, peel it, and each half I cut into half and then half again. But I do like to serve the salad arranged in a salad bowl like this, as opposed to kind of mounding it up. If I was to mound it up, I wouldn't want it to be too tall. I just think it can look a bit overwhelming that way. And this way, if you like peas, you can put peas. If you don't like snow peas, you can leave them. It's good for fussy eaters, but I just do quite like the presentation like this, but feel free to mix it if you think your family will enjoy it better that way.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Any other questions? No? Okay, we'll go on to dessert. So we are going to be making a pear and olive oil chocolate crumble. You absolutely can do this with apple too. It's actually delicious with apple. Last night I made it with apple. Tonight I'm going to be making it with pear. This is just 2 cans of pear cut into kind of wedges and kept in its juice. So I left the juice, I didn't drain it, and I've put it in my dish. Again, doing disposables because I'm giving it to a friend. Not that I'm shaming you if you do choose to use foils all the time. And then what I'm going to do is just, this is vanilla bean paste. And again, you can get it at Coles, you can get it at Woolworths. You could also use vanilla extract, but I really like the flecks of vanilla that you see using vanilla paste. So I'm just using the Queen brand. And then I'm going to add a very, very, very little sprinkle of pink salt. I don't want this to taste salty. It's not like a salted caramel where you taste the salt. But I do want to kind of cut the sweetness of all the other ingredients that are to come. So I just like to add a little pinch of salt. And how salt works is it actually opens up your taste buds. So if you do use the right amount, it shouldn't taste salty, but it will help you kind of really maximize the flavors of all the ingredients that you're using. So I have about half a cup of roughly chopped dark chocolate. You could use Lindt, you could use Valrhona, you could use Calabar. I'm actually using Alpros 70% dark chocolate. If anyone's interested, I can go and get out a bar of it and show you. But I'm putting the chocolate on top of the pears as opposed to mixing it through the crumble mixture, because when chocolate goes in the oven for a long time, it has a tendency to burn and go kind of a really strange texture. And we want it to be like pools of kind of liquidy chocolate. So I am kind of putting it on the pears, and then it will be covered mostly with the crumble. If you choose to use chocolate chips, nothing wrong with that, but just know chocolate chips have stabilizers added to them, which is kind of very intentional to kind of make sure that the chocolate chips hold their form. So you won't have kind of pools of melted chocolate like you would with a bar of just chopped dark chocolate. And this chocolate does happen to be dairy-free. I have 1 cup of rolled oats and 3/4 of a cup of self-raising flour, a dash of cinnamon and a pinch of pink salt. And then I have 45 grams or 1/4 of a cup of brown sugar and 1/4 of a cup of white sugar. You could use caster sugar, but I quite like the kind of texture of those bigger sugar grains. And I'm just going to get a bowl, and we're going to just mix this. I'm sure I chose a bowl that's too small. Fine. And I'm going to add 1/3 of a cup of olive oil. I'm going to do this by eye, but if you aren't quite comfortable yet with kind of cooking without, you know, or yeah, on your own kind of thing, I would measure it. And I'm just going to mix it with a glove. You could mix it with a spoon, but I find when I make a crumble, it just does incorporate a lot better with my hands. And I'm using, again, the light flavored extra virgin olive oil. I did a Zoom 2 nights ago where I taught this recipe, and I had a question as to how you could make it gluten-free. I don't have that much experience with gluten-free flours. I did suggest that you could sub out the self-raising flour for some almond meal, but almond meal is a bit more kind of high in a fat content than a regular flour would be. So you'd probably want to cut back your oil content just a little bit. And you do taste the olive oil a little bit, but it's pretty mild. I just think it kind of cuts the sweetness a little bit. So as I'm mixing this, I'm kind of compressing the mixture together, seeing how dry it feels, how wet it feels. The weather will change kind of how dry or wet it is. I'm feeling it's a little bit dry, so I'm adding another little drizzle of oil. I did make this 2 nights ago where I measured the oil, so 1/3 of a cup is the right quantity for this recipe. If you are going to go and properly measure it like you should. I'm without taps, as you can see at the moment. I recently moved into a new place, so my cleaning facilities are a little bit difficult. So yeah, this is the crumble mixture. And now I'm really just going to kind of squeeze the crumble mixture in my hands and then let it fall through the tips of my fingers to kind of create the right size crumble. I like some big chunks and I like some smaller too. And again, you could do this with apple, you could leave out the chocolate, you could do it with peaches. Sometimes I make a pear and blackberry crumble where I use frozen blackberries and canned pears. You absolutely could do fresh. If you have the time, please be my guest. I just know that a lot of people are busy cooking other things for Rosh Hashanah, and sometimes you just don't have the energy to, and there's nothing wrong with canned pears. Often frozen vegetables and fruit and canned fruit and vegetables is picked at their prime and they're preserved. And that's our crumble. I'm going to go check on our chickpeas and see how they're doing. So you can see our chickpeas have gone kind of really intensely golden and crispy. I'm going to be stirring the chickpeas through the couscous now. You could go on and let these cook in the oven for a further kind of 10 to 20 minutes, but I do think that this kind of golden color is a beautiful stage to take it to. And you can see that there. And it really is so fragrant. And those spices that we coated the chickpeas with will kind of leach into the couscous and ever so slightly flavor it. So that's pretty much your Rosh Hashanah meal. We'll do a recap of everything. My chicken's going to take a bit longer to cook, so I'm not going to make you guys wait around to watch that. But like I said, after that half an hour, 45-minute mark, after an hour of the chicken being in the oven on 180, I'm going to uncover it and then let it cook for another half an hour, 45 minutes, till it goes golden and crispy. We'll just do a final recap. We have our Radicchio salad with dried fig, caramelized balsamic, pepitas, olive oil and fresh basil. We have our beautiful New Zealand Ora King salmon with caramelized fennel, honey and chili. We have our LK signature green salad, our couscous, our chickens in the oven, and our apple crumble. I just want to say thank you so much for joining me. I know in these times people's spirits can be really low, but think of it as one more year of hosting and entertaining. And I just want to wish you all a beautiful Rosh Hashanah and year ahead full of only good health and happiness and blessings and self-growth and revealed good and everything and anything you pray for.